Alabama Supreme Court Justice Roy Moore says that the probate justices have a duty to enforce same-sex marriage, to enforce the same-sex marriage ban, and it must be upheld. This is despite what was the Supreme Court case, the Obergefell versus Hodges case, where the Supreme Court essentially said that same-sex marriage was the law of the land, right? It much more nuanced than that, but basically lifting all the bans on same-sex marriage across the United States. Alabama, just like George McGovern, they're not going down without a fight. We did see Kim Davis in Kentucky, which kind of became like the rallying cry for all of the people who still want to oppose same-sex marriage, all the people who feel like they have this religious duty to oppose same-sex marriage, as though there's not a difference between a license that the government issues and a rite, a ritual that you perform in the church. But I digress. The point is, they want to assert their religious definitions of marriage on the rest of America, and now they've brought it back. They've brought it back, and the only reason this means anything, it slightly means something, because it is from the Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. Now, outside of that, this probably wouldn't even be news, because the Supreme Court has already ruled. And so this Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice Roy Moore, asserting that the probate judges across the state must enforce the ban, would ultimately be held in contempt, would ultimately be struck down by the Supreme Court if it ever, or even it doesn't even have to go that far, right? So it's not really news in terms of the impact, because the probate judges, many of them, some of them, I can't say many of them, I don't know how many there are, but some of them have already came out and said that they're going to ignore this order from the Supreme Court Justice, the Chief Justice of Alabama. But there are some who are going to use this as a cover, use this as their justification to continue to deny people the right to get married to whomever they choose. Right. So you're going to have Alabama split even further on which counties you can get married in and which counties you can't. And I want to read the justification here. I think I may have to take back some of my words, what I already said, because now that I cast it in that light, I actually disagree with myself. This is actually a really big problem. This is a big problem because it's going to continue disenfranchising, not disenfranchising, but it's going to continue oppressing people in particular counties. They're going to have to go to different counties to get married, and it's going to be a hodgepodge of where you can get married in Alabama, all because this Supreme Court Justice, this Alabama Supreme Court Chief Justice, wants to continue this conversation when this should have been over back in the summer of this year. But I want to show you the hypocrisy and how they play this game, in how conservatives play this game. Let me read to you his justification. He quoted an Alabama state law stating that the Chief Justice is empowered to take affirmative and appropriate action to correct or alleviate any condition or situation adversely affecting the administration of justice within the state. So essentially, he took this statute saying that he has a responsibility to make sure that nothing encumbers or inhibits justice, so that he can enforce an injustice. Let me read it to you again. The Supreme Court, the Chief Justice, is empowered to take affirmative and appropriate action to correct or alleviate any condition or situation adversely affecting the administration of justice within the state. This was his legal precedent. This was his justification for enforcing a ban that has already been struck down by the Supreme Court. So he's using the guise of justice to enforce an injustice. This is conservatism 101. They will co-opt the name, the word, the purpose of anything, particularly in this case, justice, because his other justification was because he did not want to have a state that was confused, right? Where some states, where some counties you can get married in and some counties you can't. And ultimately, he's causing the confusion. And this is playing well with the evangelicals, right? This is a victory for them, when in reality, it's a dog and pony show that is going to be very, which is going to be detrimental to same-sex couples wanting to get married, and ultimately just delaying the inevitable, which is the decision that was already made. So in a way, it's like it's a futile effort, but it has real ramifications in terms of the people who want to get married tomorrow, tonight, yesterday. And so one of the probate judges already tweeted out that this is just a dog and pony show, and he's going to ignore the order. So in his ostensible efforts to cut down on confusion in his state, this conservative chief justice has created more confusion. Using the justification of justice, he is continuing a great injustice. I wondered if anyone else saw that glaring hypocrisy in his decision. So we'll see how this plays out, right? We'll see. Clearly, the Supreme Court decision takes precedent over it. It's the supremacy clause insists that federal law, and this decision carries the weight of federal law. Let's not even have that conversation. Marbury versus Madison, judicial review. The Supreme Court decisions carried the weight of federal law. Takes supremacy over